Now, the countries have adopted a framework for the implementation of the Loss and Damage Fund. This will go a long way towards addressing the impact of climate change, and countries will focus now on global stocktake with the aim of ensuring that the commitments made at the previous meetings are in fact honoured. Now, SABC News International editor Sophie Mokoena joins us live now for this conversation. Sophie, thank you so much for your time. How important is this announcement?
Well, quite important, because you know very well that developing countries have been complaining that the challenges that they are facing currently of climate change that relates to the carbon emissions stems from the industrialization of the continent, and therefore developed countries, the most industrialized countries, particularly your G7, must do something to help these countries to address these challenges of climate change. And therefore today, on the first day of the meeting, there was an announcement that now they have agreed how to deal with this issue, and many countries immediately made commitments and pledges, starting with the host country, the United Arab Emirates, putting aside $100 million, and of course the other countries as well, Germany coming to the party, and also the United States of America, but that was too little, $40 million, while the UAE and also Germany have been able to put more money. And we are told that tomorrow the European Union will make a pledge, and it looks like it's going to be a huge sum of money.
Now, are there, in fact, any contributions to this announcement from developed countries?
The other contribution from these developed countries is that they will continue to fund the adaptation and other related programs that are aimed at fighting climate change, and they have made a commitment that this time around, particularly the host nations, saying that it will not be big countries dictating to smaller ones what needs to happen, but they will take a cue from developing countries. I think the important thing to note is that the countries of the South have been hosting the past two sessions of COP, that was COP27, and also now COP28. And therefore, the approach, it is an approach of the voice of the South-South, and also the approach of countries that are sympathetic to the sub-Sahara and poorer countries. And therefore, you see this movement, a better movement compared to other meetings. For example, in Egypt, that's where this issue of loss and damage fund was really canvassed for countries to adopt. And then the issue of implementation was deferred to COP28. And on the first day, we are able to receive the news that now it's on the table and there's now money in the bank in terms of implementing this.
Now, of course, this was, day one as it kicked off. We saw some of, the conversations, including the Q&A, which you partook in, and also some of the questions that were answered in that regard. What can we expect tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow, I think the focus, as you heard during the media briefing, with the loss and damage fund issue now being finalized and there's money, now we have to move to issues relating to time frames based on the previous meeting. And therefore, the global stock take, the buzzword is global, and of course the center's global stock take to ensure that you implement what you had agreed on in previous meetings. For example, during the Paris Agreement, South Africa played a very prominent role in pushing developed countries to set aside money to address climate change, and there was a commitment of $100 billion. And you know, all the time the president is complaining that the implementation is very, very sluggish. So when you look at global stock take, here it will be a report that is capturing what we have achieved and where we are lacking as the world in terms of implementation of program aimed at fighting climate change. And we know that because of the war in Ukraine, because of COVID-19, there were problems because developed countries who are supposed to support developing countries did channel their energy and also resources to COVID-19 and also the war in Ukraine. Who can forget those billions and billions of arms that were bought and given to Ukraine? And therefore, that is the main issue that has derailed implementation. And our minister, Barbara Creecy, is part of that team that's looking at stock taking in terms of what we have achieved and what should be the focus. You know that the target is to ensure that you reduce the emissions by 2030, but looking at what has transpired worldwide, we saw even some countries reverting back to coal and others saying because of the challenges of the war in Ukraine, they had to go back to fossil fuel. And therefore, we are lagging behind. You know that the SG of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, this week warned the world that even areas such as Antarctica currently are experiencing challenges. And if the world doesn't move with speed, we will definitely have problems in relation to climate change. We've seen it in our own country, the floods in provinces such as KZN and also Eastern Cape, but also the drought. And therefore, you really have to move with speed. We expect the president is arriving tonight, President Ramaphosa, to participate in those sessions, particularly looking at stock taking to ensure that how do you move forward and the interventions.
All right, and we'll bring you more as the developments come then throughout the course of the evening. Thank you so much, Sophie, for your time. That is International News Editor Sophie Mokoena.